Hey everybody, Mike Toy here with Bonsai Boise. So this is a new juniper that I picked up sometime over the winter. I actually can't even remember when. But I picked it up and just sort of put it outside and let it be all winter, and now it's springtime and I'm gonna put this thing in a bonsai pot. This is actually the second of these that I've had. I have one other that I've had for 6 or 7 years. I've done a few videos on. The variety is a Juniper procumbens, but I think the common name for it is the Japanese garden juniper, something along those lines. So I don't have a solid plan yet. I'm just sort of working my way around, kind of seeing what's on the inside. Cautious in the beginning. Don't want to make any big cuts yet. But then I start to sort of see how this trunk line looks, and so I'm slowly developing a bit of a plan for it. Maybe plan is the wrong word. Slowly developing a structure for it. And I'm kind of just going around, starting at the bottom, just looking for branches that are growing from the inside of a branch right there, like that. Looking for branches that are both going up and then splitting out, like the one on the left there. And then I'm just getting rid of the branch that's growing upwards. It gives it good movement. But I am staying cautious in the beginning just because it's better to kind of nip away at it at first until you know what's going on, because you can always cut more off, but you can't put it back on. I think the majority of my mistakes and oops instances come from when I go in there guns a-blazing, and so slow and steady at first until we start to develop a bit of a system. So just kind of circle around over and over, and just, you can kind of see where it's starting to take shape there. So again, just kind of taking it slow there in the beginning. You'll see it start to really take form here in a minute. From my experience with these, with the other one that I've had for a while now, I wouldn't call them fast or slow growers. They grow in kind of spurts compared to, say a maple or a ficus or some other type of tree that seems to grow pretty steady. These kind of just have this little growth spurt where they put on a bunch of growth and then they just don't for a while. And they don't seem to be on the same schedule, so to speak, as other trees. And of course, it is a different type of tree. It's an evergreen. It's not a deciduous tree like, say, a maple, so it doesn't lose its needles or leaves in the fall and winter. But otherwise, I can say they are pretty tough and, hardy. And you can take cuttings from these too. I've tried a few times, was unsuccessful mostly. But just this past year, I was able to root a couple cuttings. I used just a little bit of soil and sand, and just put it in a semi-shady spot. And then over the winter, it just survived, surprisingly. So you can see it's got some good movement there as I'm chipping away at it, kind of figuring out which way to go. Overall, what I'm hoping is that I can bring it down and keep it kind of short rather than tall. Seems like the shorter you can get a bonsai tree, the better it looks. A lot, to a certain extent, because the taller it is, the skinnier that trunk looks. It's always about getting a thick trunk. So when you keep them short, by contrast, it makes that trunk look thicker, hence giving it a look of being older and more mature and aged. That bark, as you can see, it's really wet. Unfortunately, it rained a lot the night before I did this, so it was pretty soaked. But that bark will, now that it's more exposed out in the elements, it'll start to turn kind of not silvery maybe, but a little bit silvery, kind of just grayish, and get that aged look more. Whereas right now looks like young growth because it's just been covered by foliage. I would recommend, there's a few really good videos on this particular species of juniper. One of the videos is by, there's a YouTube channel called Bonsai Mirai. If you watch any bonsai channels or videos, I'm sure you've seen his stuff. He's excellent, very knowledgeable. He's got a couple of great videos. And then another one by Bjorn Bjorholm. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, Bjorn, if I got that wrong. But Bjorn is actually a bonsai master. And so just anything he's got to say on it, I would soak up. He's got some really good tips and knowledge on these junipers. So check those out if you get a chance. So here you can see the shape that it's sort of taking. It still looks awkward, because it's new. It's never been trimmed down like this. So you can see it more. Over time, those cuts will start to smooth out and blend in color-wise with the rest of the trunk, and it will just look a little more natural. Right now it looks awkward. Kind of like a guy like me went at it, with some clippers. I'm not completely sold on that upper part. There's a big branch that goes off to the right there. You can see it. And I might actually lose that. The more I was putting this video together, the more I looked at that and I was like, it's just too thick for being as high as it is. And I didn't really, I guess, pay attention to that in the beginning. So don't be surprised if the follow-up video to this, that branch is gone. So for now, I'm gonna just try to get all this old soil off. It looks to be pretty root bound. You can see those roots circling around and around. And I had a heck of a time just getting in there. I mean, I dug at it and chipped away for quite a while. Didn't really make a ton of progress. Oddly enough, you can see there's no roots in the middle. They just sort of went around and not so many in the middle. At least it doesn't look like it. Pretty tight, pretty compact. I will point out that I've heard you can't bare root these. I've done it for what it's worth. I'm not saying that they love it, and it's probably riskier to bare root them than to not bare root them, but all I'm saying is that I've done it and it's worked. They didn't die. I did it on this one, and I probably took this video 3 weeks ago, and it's still doing fine. So it can be done. I'm sure the timing has to be just right. One way you can tell is you can see those roots, they're not white, they haven't really been activated, so to speak. So that could be it. I'll also point out I'm not an expert at this, so take everything you hear me say with a grain of salt. Mix it with your own knowledge and experience and with other things that you hear. So I don't claim to be a bonsai master. I'm just sharing my experience. So as you can see, the problem of getting the soil out, I just went at it with a saw. And then I just sort of messed with it for a while, and get the old soil out. And there it is. That's about as close, I think, as I want to take it as far as creating a root plane. I'm going to chip away at the rest of that little trunk knob at the bottom. I'll also point out that I do spend a lot of time off camera doing some of the what I call grunt work, just raking out old soil and that type of stuff, because it's not very interesting to watch. Just know that, if you find yourself doing this and you're like, gosh, this is taking a long time, that's normal. It took a long time for me too. It's not a quick process. Just spray the roots down, just, don't want them to dry out. I do run into one kind of interesting, I'll say dilemma maybe, as I'm raking out these roots, because I want them to all be pointed outward in sort of a radial pattern. And I would say for root tips, by the way, side note, the best root work you can find is probably by Nigel Saunders. I would highly recommend his videos too. He's, I would call him an expert at root work. He's just really got it down. So check out his videos if you haven't yet. I'm sure most of you have. But what I'm getting at before is the dilemma I ran into here is, you can see that? I have two root planes. I have one at the bottom and one at the top. I actually really kind of thought about that for a while before I got rid of the top one, because I just wasn't sure which way I wanted to go. But it made more sense in the end to lose the top part of that root plane and just stick with the bottom. You don't want it uneven, though. You don't want half your roots being an inch higher on the trunk than the other half. That looks goofy. Got a pot prepared here. Soil mix I'm going with is kind of a newer blend. I actually have two blends. My normal blend is pine bark, perlite, volcanic rock, and some safety absorb. A newer blend is volcanic rock, pumice, and academa. And now I'm taking those two different mixtures and I'm mixing them both together. So it's because the first mixture is a lot cheaper ingredients than the second mixture, but the second mixture works better. So yeah, that's my long story on my recent soil mix. I'm diluting the good mix with the cheap mix, and it seems to be working. I'll also point out, I don't normally wire trees into a pot, but I am with this guy because it's new. It does not have a really established root system in here yet. And also my benches are still taken apart, and I don't know exactly where this is gonna be stationed, so better safe than sorry. I'm just gonna lightly wire it in just so it stays in the pot. But I'm always hesitant to wire trees into a pot. If I can avoid it, I avoid it, because it can, A, it's kind of ugly. B, it can mess up the roots, leave wire scars and stuff, and it can happen before you even know it because it's all under soil. Whereas when you wire a branch, you can see it. You can go, oh, it's pretty tight. I better take the wires off. Under the soil, you wouldn't even know. So this is the other part that takes a long time, the grunt work here, just working that soil into the roots, making sure there's no air pockets in there, no gaps. I'll spare you the long grunt work, but it was probably 20 minutes. You really want to make sure you do a good, thorough job of getting the tree secure, getting soil mixed in with the roots. You don't want air pockets in there, which happens pretty easily. Air pockets can just cause problems. Roots can dry out, or water can sort of like escape into those pockets and it just messes things up. You want it nice and consistently full. So I went at it for a while. After that, I gave it a good soak. Put a couple rocks in there just because I think they were just sitting there from something else, and I thought they might look cool, so I put them on there to help with stability. So yeah, I still think I'm going to lose that top branch off to the right. It's just too thick, but I'll wait a little bit. I'll let it establish. So there's a look at how it started. It was a $25 nursery stock turned into a little bonsai. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. You can see updates on this and some of the other trees I work on. And have a good rest of your day.